feet from any residential structure, which this is. And then we allowed towers to be within the height of the tower to a commercial structure basically on a case-by-case basis. It has to be approved by special use permit, reviewed by planning and zoning, and then by council. So in this case, there is one structure that is within that 114 feet. So you can see where this red circle is, this highlighted circle, everything within that shaded area is within 114 feet. I know there's kind of a lot going on there. There's some labels, but the only thing that is actually a structure is this self-storage building to the south that is owned by the same person proposing the tower. There's that right-of-way, let's go back to this, of Sandra Lane here. That is not an improved road, but it is actually city right-of-way that we have maintained as part of our right-of-way that we own. And so that is kind of where you get that buffer that it does not actually, this building to the north is not within the fall zone. The fall zone does reach over into that property to the east a little bit, but it is not within any of the structures. So when reviewing this, and when we rewrote our code a couple months ago, and we kind of mentioned that if a tower is going to be within the fall zone of a commercial or industrial structure, we would approve it on a case-by-case basis. I would argue that if we're going to designate, come up with a scenario that we would approve it in such case, this does pose a pretty good argument because the only building within the distance is a self-storage unit that does not have an occupancy, does not have a, at any point where someone is residing there or working there full-time, and the fact that it is owned by the same person proposing the tower, I think poses a pretty good argument for this specific case for this tower. This did go to planning and zoning, and it passed via a vote of 6-1 last week. And there was, I believe we'll have some more comments tonight, some comments from the public of opposition, and then representative from AT&T is here as well to answer any questions you may have. So,
Sal, you did say, maybe I didn't hear it right, but our ordinance says you're not allowed to have a building inside the fall zone?
Not a residential structure. A commercial structure can be. We just have to approve it on a case-by-case basis with a special use permit.
So if a person's renting that garage, is that what that's for?
To the south?
The one that's inside the circle?
Yeah, it's a self-storage unit that is owned by the same person that is going to lease the
But
tower.
does he rent it out?
It's a self-storage unit, yes. It's
So it could be a possibility somebody being in that building when it fell.
Right, I think the
Yeah.
idea is if they reside there and they're an occupant.
correct.
So it's not there for situations where you've got, somebody going in and out.
Right. And I think the situation that you look at that fall zone, when these fail, it would have to be a high wind, a tornado, a big storm. It's not likely that someone's going to be rummaging through their storage unit during.
Didn't we also say in that code, though, something about a certain distance from the edge of the ladder? So I don't know what it was.
Well, it's the height of the tower.
Yeah, well, but for some reason I got my mind 100 feet some way, that we said if it falls, there can't be anything at all within, it has to fall on the lot. No, that
Nope.
wasn't in there?
Nope.
And my other question is, my concern is where they talk about it saying most likely. What does most likely mean?
Are you talking about the language in the letter?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that the applicant
Yeah,
could argue on that
we'll
behalf.
ask them.
Any other questions from council members? Comments?
The only last thing I'll mention is that there were some discussions of co-location and RF studies of making the applicants supply that information on why it's needed and if there's holes in the service in that area that it's going to fix, or if they could go within another tower. I think Mark will point that out, that in 2014 that was an amendment to the state law that we cannot require that information any longer. It is protected. Basically, the towers are protected by state law that we cannot force them to have any of that information submitted beforehand.
Sal, I'm sorry, what did you tell me the vote was in planning and zoning?
6-1 in favor.
Is there a lot of people there?
I think like 5 people spoke total, for and against?
Sal, just for clarity, the letter, it says 5-1. Is that,
I thought there were 7 people there total. You remember, Mayor? Maybe it was 5-1. I know there was one
You know what, was
against.
Tony there? Maybe,
Tony voted no, and everyone else voted in favor. I thought there were 7
maybe
people total.
Carolyn
Maybe there was
wasn't
only.
there.
Carolyn was not. Sandy, Mark, John.
You know, when I was counting up top, I may have counted Mark, so that could be right, that it was 5-1 then,
For
so
clarity.
yes.
Okay.
1 no vote, the rest in favor, so.
Okay, anything else from council members?
Thank you.
Okay. So this is a public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to address the council on this item? Please come forward and give us your name and address.
Hi, good evening. My name is Jake Sprague. I'm with Network Real Estate, and my address is 5055 Highway N, Suite 200.
Mind taking that mask off? So I can
Absolutely.
understand
Sorry. I'm also joined here by Jomo Castro. He's with AT&T. He's here to speak a little bit more. So if at any point during my presentation you have any questions, feel free to interrupt me. I know there's probably plenty of questions that'll be asked. Basically, my job with Network Real Estate is AT&T. They discover a need for a new target area for a facility due to their network demands or future growth prospects, and they hire my company, Network Real Estate, who is the turf vendor that deals with all new sites and all modifications to existing sites. And we go out and find a location that's suitable for AT&T from an engineering standpoint, and from their current network standpoint, and we lease the land from the property owner and go through the regulatory aspects of things, and as well as the zoning like you see here tonight. If you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, sorry. So basically, the new sites are driven by, there's tools and various computer software that's a little bit above my head that the radio frequency engineers use to identify holes in the network and demand that will be continuing to grow for the network. And this this can also include drive tests where they're actually in the field and are getting hard data from that. But it's also really driven from customer complaints and people saying, we don't have coverage here, and that really informs where they are choosing to enhance their network. And one of the unfortunate realities is with everybody using their phones at home and the increase of working from home, that a lot of these demand areas are in residential areas. So once they identify one of these areas, that we go out and we kind of identify from a geographic standpoint where would be an ideal location for a site that would work with AT&T's network. And they really strive to give the communities the most service with the least amount of impact. That's where the efficient placement of sites come into play. Obviously they don't want any more sites than what they need, and their first option is always to co-locate on an existing tower if that's possible. It's just cheaper from their standpoint to do that. But if the network demands really determine that that's not an option, then they have to go out and look to build a new site. So what we do is we pinpoint areas that meet all the regulatory requirements, and that's a SHPO, the FAA, FEMA, FCC. There's a multitude of different regulatory approvals that need to take place in order for it to be approved and ultimately go on air. And the other thing is, from a zoning standpoint, we have to work with the local zoning authority to make sure that we're in a location that is suitable for the city. Sorry, go ahead.
Just real quick, before I forget to ask, are you going to be subleasing some of this tower out to other companies?
It is going to be built for the potential future. Yes. So basically, it's currently being built for AT&T, but ultimately that will be available for future co-locators as well. And I'm going to turn it over to Jomo here to talk a little bit.
I'm guessing the weights and everything are figured into your geographics and everything?
I'm sorry, what?
The weights, if you do sublease it out, Is it gonna make the tower even more heavier?
So they run a structural analysis every time anything gets changed on the tower or if a new tower tenant is added. So that would be something that would be taken into account.
Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
Hey, good evening. My name is Jomo Castro with AT&T, 15 South Rock Hill Road, St. Louis, Missouri, 63119. I am our regional director for external affairs for AT&T. So I manage legislative and community affairs in Franklin County, Jefferson County, and Southeast Missouri. Thank you, Mayor and City Council, for having us here tonight and hearing our case. In Missouri, AT&T has invested more than $1.9 billion of wireless and wireline infrastructure into our networks between 2017 and 2019. We're able to do that by working jointly with cities throughout the state. The investments increase reliability, coverage, and overall performance for residents and businesses and first responders especially. Our investments in these new macro towers have been significant, with more than 50 new on-air towers deployed since December of 2019. We've actually we've boosted coverage in Franklin County specifically. We went live with 2 new sites in Union and Pacific in December of 2019. And in 2021, we have 2 sites scheduled for Sullivan, in addition to the site we're talking about today. And we also have an additional site forecast for 22 here in Washington as well. So these improved sites provide wireless 4G LTE coverage, so improved cell phone coverage, and all of these sites also come equipped with Band 14. So Band 14 is a special kind of spectrum that is reserved exclusively for emergency communications. So in deploying these networks, whenever in each city that we deploy these, we make the surrounding areas safer. AT&T is continuously working to provide the best service in the most responsible and cost-effective way. As Jake alluded to, that's a priority. We also rigorously comply with all local and federal laws and ordinances. I won't get into the benefits of wireless coverage. I think we're all well aware of that. But, you know, many of us have felt the frustration of having a fully charged and fully loaded smartphone sitting in our pocket that we're not able to fully use. Part of this structure will help alleviate that for residents, businesses, and first responders here in Washington. Jake is going to now go through a little bit of specific information for how this site is going to impact the area. Turn it back to Jake.
Thank you, Jomo. Thank you. So I'm going to go through a couple of the site-specific factors. I apologize if there's any redundancies from Sal's presentation. I'll try to keep things brief. So basically, the site that we're looking at is right here. And its main purpose is the site that AT&T is currently on 5th Street. It's pretty much overloaded, and you're seeing these blue and green right here. That's poor coverage. I know these maps can be a little esoteric, and I apologize. They're a little bit over my head in some respects too. But these are the propagation maps where it shows the coverage. And this site right here is mostly to offload a lot of the traffic that's overloading this 5th Street tower, as well as to cover a lot of the residential and the shopping area right there near the Phoenix Center. And a little bit further on, I'll give you guys what it's projected to look like after the new tower goes in. If you wouldn't mind, next slide, sorry. So what we're proposing is the 175-foot monopole tower within an 60 by 80 lease area. And I'll show you an example of we saw a slide of what the fencing material looks like in the previous presentation. I'll show you another one that kind of shows within shows what the fencing material looks like, kind of more in the actual setting of a tower. The tower's been designed with the fall radius not to exceed 65%. I heard the questions of, the specifics of that. Unfortunately, I'm not an engineer, so I can't get into, exactly what the line by line of the letter states. But I can tell you that all of the towers are designed to the specific standards of ANSI TIA 22G, which is the structural standard for antenna supporting structures and antennas, which is the code used and what they must abide by, if you wouldn't mind. So this is the location right here within the manufacturing district. And, we chose that because it gave us the most, from an aesthetic standpoint, we try to go to an area that is going to be the least impactful as far as driving by. Ultimately, we think that these kind of, they blend in over time. It's mostly like a utility tower, but nevertheless, we did try to go here because there's some guard from the trees behind it, and it is located within a manufacturing or an industrial district, I'm sorry. So this is the same slide without the blue that Sal had really nicely blued out for the fall zone. As you can see, the building to the north is outside of the fall zone, and really the building to the south of that storage unit is the only thing that would fall within that fall zone letter, and that is owned by the property owner that we are entered into a lease with.
What is in that fall zone that you have there that you're using, what is the radius of that fall zone?
The radius of the fall zone there is 114 feet. That's 65% of the height of the tower of 175 feet.
And so the special use, you're asking for a change in our code, because our code says the height of the tower plus 10 feet. So you're asking for a reduction of that?
Yes, sir, correct. So this is an example of what a monopole tower looks like. I'm sure you guys are all very familiar with it. And over here is the proposed tower that we're applying for the special use permit for tonight. As you can see, you asked about the future co-locators or what it's being designed and built for. The top center line right here is for AT&T, but it's also being designed to accommodate 2 additional co-locators right there. And there's obviously 60 by 80 leased areas, so there will be plenty of room for the future co-locators. And hopefully it will reduce the overall need for future towers in the area. This is a picture of the Simtech fence. It shows, and this is actually a shelter that I think is not currently being used anymore. They're using even smaller cabinets, so I can't speak to that for certain, but I can say that this is very similar to what the aesthetic of the outside will look like. So this right here is what the new facility the proposed new facility tower will do for the improvement of coverage in the area. This was all blue, and the next slide will kind of give you a good side-by-side, yeah, if you wouldn't mind going. So this is currently what is without the tower, and as you can see down here, this is all blue, and this is all blue and green. If you go to the next slide. And with this proposed tower, this actually does significant improvement to the network in the area and down to the south too. What is not on the agenda for this evening, but also we've received approval for another tower on the Sharpshooters lot down over here. And that is to improve some of the network coverage up here. But this should, the engineers projected this should really do significant increase for the network capabilities.
I don't see the tower that's on big D's old lot up there, is that not AT&T?
No, yeah, so all the ones up here just show AT&T's current sites, not towers in the area.
Will your privacy fence be around the whole lot or just the base of the?
It'll be around the entire, any equipment, so it won't be around the entire lot. And, you know, so with AT&T being the initial tenant, it'll probably be smaller, and should another wireless carrier co-locate on the tower, it'll be expanded to surround any ground equipment.
Yeah, I don't think it'd be very attractive around that whole lot.
Yeah, no, I think it would probably be, you know, a little bit overkill to do it around the entire lot. It'd just be around the general ground equipment to start, or ground equipment plus a little bit of a buffer space for techs to get in and out of. But yeah, I agree with you, yeah.
Thank you.
Any other
No
questions?
Questions?
Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you.
Would you like me to wipe this off?
Mark can do that.
Sorry, appreciate it, sir.
Okay, is there anyone else who would like to address the council on this item? Thank you, Mark.
Okay, if I take my mask off?
Might be easier for us to understand.
Good evening, council. My name is Keegan Shea, and I'm an attorney at the Stinson Law Firm in St. Louis, and we represent SBA. SBA owns and operates a 157-foot cell tower located at 85 Cecilia Drive here in Washington. SBA's tower was built in 2004, and it currently serves Sprint as its one and only carrier tenant on the tower. Now, SBA's tower is a third of a mile, 0.33 miles, to the southeast of AT&T's proposed tower, and I'm here tonight to respectfully object to AT&T's special use permit application. The first issue I have with this special use permit application is that there is no evidence at all that it was signed by the landowner. Section 400.215 of the Washington Zoning Code governs requirements of written SUP applications. And it states, quote, "The application must be signed by the owner of the parcel for which the special use permit is sought." So there was a version of the application that was submitted to and discussed at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting last Wednesday. And I have a copy of it here. If you would like me to pass around a couple, I can, but I can tell you there is no signature at all on this special use permit application. On the signature line, I don't know if I got enough for everyone, but as you can see on the signature line, it's just the typed in name of Jay Sprague, who just spoke to you, and then there is no evidence at all of the landowner's signature. My colleague, Ben Woodard, attended last Monday's Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, and he raised this issue and cited to the code and said, hey, this is supposed to have the landowner's signature, because the landowner is Scott Langford, the owner of Anytime Storage, but again, the signature is not on this. And someone from the city told us that they have a copy of the signed application in their records, but that it was inadvertently left out of the packet that was circulated and used that night at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. So the very next day, on Tuesday, we submitted a sunshine record request to the city, asking for any and all documents that the applicant has given to the city relating to the special use permit application. This morning, we received 78 pages of documents from the city. We only received one version of the application, this version that's dated January 12, 2021, and that does not have the landowner's signature. So, for this reason alone, council, the special use permit application should be denied because it does not follow the express language of the zoning code ordinance. And another concern I have with this application is that it's being rushed through the process. So notice that this special use permit application would be discussed at this meeting here tonight, was published in a local newspaper on January 31, 2021, the Missourian, about 8 days before last Monday's Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. I mean, normally this notice is not published until after the application is heard by the Planning and Zoning Commission, which suggests that this whole application process is being rushed. So one of my colleagues representing SBA spoke with Ryan Lindenbrick last Friday, and I'm not sure if Ryan's here today, but Ryan lives less than 185 feet east of the property where the AT&T tower is proposed to be built. And Mr. Lindenbrick advised that he never received any notice about the special use permit application. Now, when I reviewed the zoning code ordinance, I didn't see any specific, notice by regular mail. The only notice requirement I saw was the publication notice. And I just don't know if the publication notice is the best means to give all the property owners within 185 feet, the right to object to this. And I would just ask the council to consider that and consider the aspect that, hey, maybe this application is kind of getting rushed through this process here. Maybe we need to delay it to another meeting so that we can make sure everyone has the proper notice, everyone can object if they want to. I also want to chat about something you brought up, Mr. Councilman Wessels, about how on October 19, 2020, the city passed a zoning amendment establishing a setback requirement for cell towers. And it said the setback requirement is the height of the tower plus 10 feet. And so AT&T is arguing for an exception, to that ordinance. I just want to reiterate that setback rules are put into place to protect citizens and property owners. As you've already been explained, AT&T's engineers found that AT&T's tower would have a 114-foot fall radius if this tower were to fall over. So if we look up there, this fall radius extends well over each of the 4 adjoining property lines, extends entirely over the building to the south. It extends nearly all the way across Alberta Lane to the west. So anyone walking or driving on Alberta Lane is in the fall zone. An innocent bystander on the road is in the fall zone. And there is a mobile home park to the south of this location. There's a high likelihood that there's children playing in the area, children playing in this 114-foot fall zone. There has been no justification presented to avoid this setback requirement. It just creates unnecessary risk. And one of the final items I want to mention here is AT&T just put on this presentation about how this tower is going to increase cell coverage. There is a couple points I want to make about that because they brought it to your attention. The first is Mr. Sprague did mention, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what I heard was he said the first thing AT&T does is they try to see if they can co-locate onto an existing tower. Well, I already told you we have an existing tower 0.33 miles to the southeast of this proposed location. And a couple more documents I would like to share if you just bear with me for a second. So on February 3rd, 2021, upon learning about AT&T's application, SBA's site marketing manager for SBA's existing tower, the one on 85 Cecilia Drive, reached out to AT&T by an email advising that, hey, we have capacity to put you on our tower. And we never received a response to that email. And if you like, I do have some copies I can pass around. It's just a short email explaining that we do have some space, and I apologize, I didn't bring quite enough for everyone. But I also apologize, I have my name.
Okay.
And then that's my last one. I do apologize. And so we reached out to AT&T and said, look, this whole tower is unnecessary. You can just co-locate onto ours. And I just want to reiterate what Mr. Sprague said, which was the first thing they do is they decide if they can co-locate. Which brings me to one of the final points I want to make here. So our site marketing manager also wrote a letter to the city, the Department of Planning and Engineering Services, dated February 4, 2021, confirming that we do have capacity for AT&T, and that the city can avoid construction of an unnecessary tower if AT&T co-located onto SBA's current 157-foot tower. And I've also spoken with, SBA, and they said they would be willing to, discuss adding an extension onto the current tower to make it.
You have to stay.
You have to stay down there, and somebody,
I'm sorry.
I mean, just keep going.
Well, for these reasons, I suggest or recommend that the city council deny the application. And I just want to circle back to my first point, which was the zoning ordinance requires the landowner's signature to be on the application. The application dated January 12, 2021, is not signed by the landowner. It does not comply with the zoning ordinance, and that alone is grounds to deny the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Sal, do you have any comments regarding those, his comments? Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. I can address a few of those. I do have a signed application that was resubmitted. So the original application that was emailed to us, that gentleman pulled up, did not have the original signature. It did have AT&T's as the applicant. We did, and it got brought up at Planning and Zoning, request that a new one be submitted. We thought maybe there was a hard copy mailed to us and then a version emailed. So we thought maybe that the hard copy had the correct signature and the emailed one was blank from when it was scanned in. And it turned out we didn't have either. And so Scott Langford turned in a new application on February 10th. With the correct signature. So we did have that corrected to make sure we had permission from that. And then as far as the process, we did the same as we do for any public hearing, rezoning, special use permit. We send letters to everyone within 185 feet, and we measure that with a mapping system from property line. So it's not just 185 feet from where the tower is, it's 185 feet from the highlighted parcel. So we measure it from all four corners. And I believe a couple of these homes were within that 185 feet, and I know someone spoke at Planning and Zoning, so they did receive that letter. And it goes out as soon as we get the application, and then the public hearing is letting them know there is a meeting at Planning and Zoning, but the notice is for this meeting tonight. And so that's why the distance between when the letter is and when Planning and Zoning is, that's always a shorter time period because we notice for the public hearing at council. So other than that, everything was pretty standard on the process and timing of all of this.
Sal, let me ask our council read. I'm trying to recall. It's been a few months ago. The owner at 85 Cecilia Drive on that tower requested from us to change the aesthetics of that tower to handle more coverage. Now I'm hearing that they have enough coverage to handle on that tower. Is that contrary to what I heard before?
Yeah, so I think it was over a year ago, the owners of the SBA tower on Cecilia Drive requested to take down the flag and put up, because right now they have the cylinder antennas, and they wanted to put the more traditional that you would see on here with these antennas. And in order to do that, they had to take down the flag, and that would require it to lose its stealth, right now it's disguise tower. That's in our code. If you disguise a tower as a flagpole, you actually don't have to get a special use permit as long as it meets the setback requirements. And that was denied by council back, I guess it was over a year ago at this point. So I don't know if their capacity is with more cylinder.
At that time, they said their capacity it warranted more, that they needed more capacity, or they had to build another tower, is what I was under the impression of then.
Yeah, that is what I remember as well.
So now they're saying they have room for AT&T to be on there. So that's contrary to what I heard a year ago.
Yep.
Okay.
Any other questions?
And I will say the letter that was submitted saying that they have the capacity at the tower, I'll just remind you that, we cannot make comments on requiring businesses to co-locate together.
Sal, tell me again, on the planning and zoning letters that are sent out for 185 feet or more or less, you said that one of the individuals did not get the letter?
No, they said, so there was a neighbor here who said they received it, so they must have been one of the homes here that was in there. Again, we run that through a mapping system. It pulls up everyone's address within that 185 feet, so I couldn't tell you which ones by name, but someone did mention on record at Planning and Zoning that they received a letter and they lived off of Commodore Drive.
Can you say a time frame on when you do send that letter out?
So the applications, I mean, we have to have applications in 3 weeks before the public hearing for deadline. So whenever they get it in, we send all the letters in as we get them. So it's typically 2 weeks, if, depending on when the application is, typically 2 weeks from planning and zoning, 3+ from council. Again, we don't send all the letters at the same time. We do it as applications come in. So.
It might be helpful to know, too, that there is no requirement in either the city code or state law that we send out notices to anybody at all, regardless of how far they are from an application for a special use permit. That's only required in the event of a rezoning application, which this is not. We send those letters out as a courtesy, but it's not required by either our code or by state law. So
Thank you,
if
Mark.
we miss somebody, it's unfortunate, but we don't have to send any. We could just put an ad in the paper, notice a public hearing, and that meets all of our requirements.
Do you have a concern with the application, Mark, or as long as there's a
No.
signed application with Sal, we're okay?
No, I think that's been cured to the extent that there was a defect, which I'm not even sure there was. That's been cured now that we have a signed application.
Sal, I'm still, okay, since we redid that code, and I'm still talking about that radius,
Yeah.
that fall zone. When we redid that, if I remember right, this is the first application we've had.
Since we've redone the code.
Yes.
Correct.
And our first application, we're making an exception to that fall zone. So I'm just wondering how P and Z address, I'm not sure why you would do that.
Well,
We
so-
had a fall zone and then they say, no, it's okay.
Yeah, so I wouldn't argue that it's not necessarily an exception. So we didn't have that distance in there beforehand. Our previous code only addressed the setbacks from residential. It didn't even mention what it had to be from commercial industrial. That was just earlier this year. It said it couldn't be more than 100 feet, and that was the issue. Planning and zoning recommended at that point to also make it the height of the tower plus 10 feet from any structure, no matter residential or commercial. And then staff's recommendation after they had that change, when we brought it before you, that was actually too restrictive. We do obviously have some telecommunications issues, and that we would have the possibility of not being able to provide that service by being too restrictive. And so our recommendation for that final edit of that code amendment was to have that final sentence in that section to say, unless approved by city council on a case-by-case basis. So it's not necessarily a variance, it's just saying, hey, if you are not within the height of the tower plus 10 feet, you have to submit documentation and address why that setback is not going to be met. And that's when I say it's on a case-by-case basis, where if, in my eyes, in my argument, or I guess in my opinion with this, my recommendation is that if you're going to design a scenario where you are approving the lessened setback, this is a pretty good scenario for that case because of the fact that it is on the same, with property by the same owner, and it is not something that is fully occupied. But you're correct, it does have.
There's not a residence within the fall.
Yeah, and we wouldn't allow that anyway. Any residence within 200 feet, you cannot, that is pretty clear in the code. You can't get that amended. Any commercial industrial structure within the height of the tower plus 10 feet, and if they don't meet that setback, then it just has to be addressed in the ordinance as to why they can't meet that, and then it can be voted on. I think in this case, that's because we don't require them to submit a fall zone letter, but that's their prerogative to say, hey, look, we're not meeting that setback, this is why, here's our fall zone letter. That, in their eyes, helps their argument.
Are you good, Mark?
I guess, yeah, it's okay, I got to think, that's all right. You're good, you explained it.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions of council members at this point?
I'm sure there's some other people in the audience that would like to speak. Thank you.
I do want to share, before you open up the floor, we did receive just this afternoon a petition by one property owner. They've got this, I think these are copies of just their objections, and I will go ahead and pass those around for all of you. Pick one and pass it around.
Okay, is there anyone else who would like to address the council on this item? Well, let's have someone new, so.
My name is Katie Lindenbrink. I live at 609 Commodore Drive. As a neighboring resident to the proposed 175-foot cell tower by AT&T, I am opposed. The radio frequency waves that the tower puts off is a valid public health and environmental concern. The data that SBA has provided is evidence that a new tower will not increase service. In addition, AT&T does have the option of co-locating on SBA's current tower, which is not far from the proposed location. A new 175-foot tower will not increase service. If there is not an increase in service, this proposed tower cannot be justified. The fall ratio calculations are an estimate. A mathematical error could be hazardous to those in close proximity. A yes vote for the tower would clearly disregard the neighboring citizens' public health concerns, the environmental impact, and the property values affected by the proposed tower. Today, we are asking each of you to support your residents and decline the proposed tower. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Someone else?
My name is Amy Howell, and I live at...
Pull that down. There you go.
I'm pretty short.
Okay.
My name is Amy Howell, and I live at 614 Commodore Drive, right across the street from Mrs. Lindenbrink. I just want to probably get emotional here, but I've lived there for 21 years, and when I moved there, I was one of the the younger folks. So I saw all these little kids growing up, and then I had kids, and they saw my kids all grow up. And now we're having like a surge in the neighborhood where young families are coming back to our neighborhood. And so now we get to see their little kids grow up, which is fun. It's a true neighborhood. And I just think something like this ruins the aesthetic of our neighborhood, because I understand scientifically and business-wise everything they talked about. But what they're not talking about is right on the other side of that property, there's a hill which leads right down to our cul-de-sac in a neighborhood. We still borrow eggs and milk from each other. We're just still a really tight-knit neighborhood, and this is the kind of thing, in my opinion, that takes away from that. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Rick?
My name is Ron Lindenbrink. As my wife Katie was just up here. I'm interested in knowing what's going to happen with the property value later. And what if this tower would fall and let's just say it hits the brick wall around it or whatever they got going up, hit the concrete, that pole shatters and sends a 20-foot piece down the road 100 foot, maybe through my ceiling or my roof, or through dance craze where the kids are over there dancing. What happens then? Who's responsible for that? Let me ask any one of you, I don't care who it is, Mayor Sandy. What if this thing all come to light within 2 weeks of knowing the tower was coming in your backyard, and they were putting this tower in, and you knew nothing about what it could do to the people, all you know is what you read about the radio frequencies and the different stuff that goes through the air from it. Mm-hmm. What would you want that to do to your backyard? How would you like that? Would you like that in your backyard? Or any of you? I mean, I don't care who it is, any of you. When you got a tower just a couple 100 foot away that AT&T can take and use supposedly for what they want. Why can't they just move down to that tower instead of putting another one in? They could maybe fall on my neighbor's his business. Mm-hmm. Or any of them kids that are dancing up there. Or one of them kids that are walking up from the trailer playing in the backwoods and the storm comes along and the tower blows down and falls on them. What about that? I mean, and why didn't we get some kind of notice prior to 4 days or 5 days before the first zoning and whatever committee you guys got going on? We should have known about this last year when it was brought up in March and they were up there drilling. Why didn't we know then? Now we get 2 weeks or 3 weeks to come in here and try to fight it? I think it's a bunch of crap, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I never did hear any answers from anybody. What is your take on that, having one put in your backyard? And I see 4 or 5 of you guys up there that I know. I can't even get an answer out of nobody.
Well, I think that we were, this is why you're here, to address the council, and this is how we're making our decisions. So, anyway.
You guys aren't allowed to give personal opinions up there or nothing? You just let the city do what they want and come in and say, well, we don't care what they really say, we're going to sneak this in here and let AT&T spend another $1 billion. If they spent $1 billion on that tower, I guarantee you they made $2 billion somewhere else.
Okay.
Is that,
No, boy, I'll answer you.
pardon me?
I'll answer you, no problem. But I haven't heard from you. I didn't know. If you knew about this, call me. And then
I would have
know.
called you if I didn't wait until I got to 4 days before the last meeting.
And I respect
I'd have
that.
called my council once, this guy over here, Sullivan.
I don't want you to think I wasn't going to talk to you, that's all.
No, I was looking for an answer. Who wants a 175-foot cell tower in their backyard?
I wouldn't want it in my backyard, though.
Huh?
I wouldn't want it in my backyard. You have
I got one person to answer out of 7 or 8 of you. I just, it's kind of a crappy thing in a way to try to run the city, trying to sneak crap in there.
Oh. Thank you. Anyone else? Rick?
I'm Rick Minch. I own the property on 2011 Sandra Lane, which is right next to this tower. I wrote a letter to the council. Do you all receive that?
That's what we just passed around that we received today. We just
Okay.
passed that around.
We just got it.
Would the council be able to address each item on this for me? Number one, I think has already been addressed, that we, the property owners, only had a couple weeks to say anything about it. So there may be a lot of opposition which has not yet been brought to light. Item number two, this would definitely decrease the value of my property. If I wanted to sell it for residential, I think nobody want a 175-foot cell tower in their driveway. Any comment on that?
Where's your,
Property devaluation.
where's the property you're talking about on that map?
It was on the,
You make it bigger if you could.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm just trying to help you out here as much as I can. If you can.
Okay, well, the map don't show.
Hold on. Sorry about that.
there was you're off of Sandra Lane, right?
Yeah, Sandra Lane is a designated street that was never built.
Right. So if you can.
And it runs
find that.
right along, it's probably, I'd say 30 feet from where they want to put the tower.
Here, let me look at, hold on one second. Let me try this out.
There we go.
There we go.
Yeah, okay, there you see Sandra Lane. You see that big white building, that's the dance studio. And the one to the right, I think, is mine then.
Right here?
Yeah. Now, they say there's a difference between tower height requirements for residential and commercial. Is that correct?
I think when they were talking about the fall zone.
Fall zone, yeah.
That's stuff that they take into consideration,
Fall
whether
zone.
it's residential or commercial.
See, I in the security business, we are a 24/7 business. That building is occupied like a residence for that reason. So it's not a storage shed like it was been said before.
So you actually have a business out of that building, sir, is that right?
Yes. 24/7. We're a security company and we monitor alarm systems 24 hours a day. So there's people in that building. If this occupancy of the building is an issue, that's what I'm trying to bring up. It is occupied. It's not a storage shed. There's a barn to the right of it that is storage, but the main building there, it's closest to Sandra Lane, right there, yeah.
And that one's occupied 24/7.
It's occupied building, yes, like a residence. It has full facilities for staying. We got shower, kitchen, the whole 9 yards, because people got to be there all the time. Okay, then, and the property value, okay, so this is a nice piece of property. It's 2 acres in the middle of town. that Sandra Lane's the only driveway going in, there's no streets around it or anything. If I want to sell that sometime, somebody want to build a house there, the cell tower is probably a permanent structure. I doubt that anyone would say, well, I want to put a $500,000 house. It's a nice little 2-acre property with 100-year-old trees and such. We got this nice cell tower, cell tower in our driveway. So it's property devaluation in my case, and I was offered no compensation for that. It seems like it's a money game. AT&T is going to make $1 million. The city may make money from taxation on it. The property owner that the tower is sitting on gets a lease on that, and I get devalued property because of it. That's my argument on that point. Number 3 was the adverse effects of 5G radiation have not been fully studied. Nobody really knows what it's going to do or not do to somebody, and right next to me there is a dance studio. It's got little kids in and out of there all the time, and which is also a concern for the 5G radiation plus the fall radius. Those kids play on Sandra Lane and across from it, which is I keep all that mowed real nice. And when some kids apparently are in the dance studio, the younger ones or other ones will come and play on that property all the time. So they're definitely within the fall zone of the tower. So I think that's a danger for them. And then the daycare center right down the street, as far as 5G radiation, they're outside the fall zone, but they're still within the radiation thing. I don't know. Nobody knows what the radiation would do. Okay, from my experience also, a 170-foot tower is a lightning magnet. Okay, you put some piece of steel that high in the air, lightning's going to hit it, I guarantee you. When lightning hits, it's not one strike. If you've watched lightning, it's got tendrils coming off. Those tendrils could hit my property, the dance studio, start fires, blow holes in the roof, all kinds of different things. So the part of a lightning magnet is something I don't care for. My other point is number 6. Who of you would want it, the 175-foot tower right next to your house? So to me, it comes down to money, big money versus what the city residents of Washington want and don't want. And there's some opposition to this tower here tonight, but there hasn't been time to really organize opposition that would have happened if we had a month or two to consider it. We had basically 2 weeks. The people with a dance studio might object. The parents that bring their kids there might object if they know, well, my kid's playing over here, and if lightning hits the tower or wind hits the tower, it could fall over and fall right on one of my children. So it looks to me like it's a money versus safety issue, and I think safety is more important than money.
Rick, did you express your concerns to the planning and zoning last week?
Did I what?
Did you express your concerns to the planning and zoning last week?
I did. They said nothing. Nobody commented on anything I had to say or anything like that. They voted.
Oh, go on. Did you talk to the folks at the dance studio?
I did not. There was a nurse that was here that lives in the proximity of this tower, and she was going to talk to him. And she's more familiar with the medical problems and maybe radiation. You know, she's not here tonight, I don't think. But we were going to talk to the dance studio and the people that come there. Say, this is, you know, they probably have no idea about this thing, but you see, their kids are playing there all the time. This tower has a possibility of falling over. Now, that may not happen very often, but it must happen often enough that they already plotted it out, the fall radius. And a lot of times, a tower like this, well, it can stand a good wind, but it's like a chain link fence. Sometimes a piece of a tarp or something blows up in a strong wind and catches it. Now it increases, great increases, you would know this, great increases the fact that it's going to take it down. And that's what strong winds do. They pick up stuff that's laying around, you know. My property, it seems as the wind blows that way. When they were remodeling the bowling alley, all the plastic and stuff they were using over there blew over against my trees on the property, you know, big pieces of it. And stuff like that can catch on these towers and create a resistance enough that could push the tower over even beyond the 14-foot fall radius. You know, I'm not a tower expert, but it's just common sense, I would think.
Okay.
So I think the council, well, I'd like the council to consider either giving us property owners around here, the dance studio, the daycare center, more time to gather people up that may oppose to this, as opposed to passing it before everybody had their say in it.
Okay.
Is there any questions about anything on my letter or anything like that? Okay. Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Rick. Is there anyone else? Okay, you want to come forward?
Thank you. My name is Jessica Ponder, and I own the property at 613 Commodore Drive, directly adjacent to the property that was discussed already. I really appreciate this opportunity, and I appreciate this dialogue because a lot of this dialogue did not exist last week when we were here. So I really appreciate your attention, and especially the attention to detail that's going on here. There were a few questions that were raised last week that were really not addressed in any way, shape, or form. They were heard and accepted and not really addressed. And so several of those have been brought up tonight. I don't have a good order because several people have spoken in front of me, but you know, we were admonished that we are not allowed, that you are not allowed to make decisions based on co-location, that there is express law forbidding you from making that sort of making any judgment call based on co-location, and yet AT&T came up and talked about how they intend to co-locate and they intend to reduce the amount of towers in the future by making available space to co-locate. And if it's already illegal for you to make decisions about new towers based on co-location on the tower that exists, then it's probably going to be illegal for you to make future decisions based on co-location on AT&T's tower. So none of that is going to help reduce the amount of towers, and by building a new tower and not being allowed to discuss co-location, then you know, every new company that wants to make a profit can bring in their own towers. Something that was not brought up, and I was a little upset to see when AT&T showed you his, I think you used the word esoteric figures, is that that's AT&T's service. That's not service in our neighborhood. I don't have any issues with service in that neighborhood, and I do work from home. And I do have children there, and I intend to bring another one into the world in another 6 weeks or so. So, you know, this is really important to me in terms of, you know, what we're discussing here. There is service in that neighborhood, and I work from home, and I don't have any fidelity issues whatsoever. I don't happen to use AT&T, so I'm not one of their customers, so they're not really concerned about me or what I have and what my needs are. But the figures that they were showing you are specifically about AT&T's customer base and who that they can make money off of and who they can't make money off of. So when they say that they have people complaining and that they're here for the residents and they're here to help everyone, like, let's be honest with ourselves that they are here on behalf of themselves and the customers that they want to make money off of. They're not here on behalf of the customers that have plenty of service in the neighborhood, and they're not going to improve service for those of us who already have service in the neighborhood. So I understand that co-location is not a part of this discussion, and there's rules about that, and I respect that. But let's be honest about what AT&T's motive is here, because it's not my family, and it's not taking care of me and my ability to work from home. So I was a little upset to see that they displayed those maps without actually mentioning that that's specific to AT&T coverage and doesn't represent any other cell phone service, which we don't have an issue with. I won't talk about the signature. That's come up several times. We've resolved that. There was one other unresolved thing that never got brought up again, that they were requesting, in addition to requesting the setback expectation of the height of the tower plus 10 feet be excused in this case. They were also requesting a landscaping requirement waiver, and there's been no discussion about that, so I'm curious what the situation is there. But more importantly, this is a 60 by 80 foot lot that is a parcel of a greater sized property. And so there's been a lot of discussion tonight about this 60 by 80 foot lot housing a 175 foot tower. So let's do these numbers. You've got I'm told there's 37 feet to the north and 43 feet to the south before you get out of this leased lot. So they are wanting to put up a 175 foot tower on an area that is 60 foot by 80 foot. And so in no direction does that area come close to, let's say, the height of the fall zone, the estimated fall zone, which is now 114 feet plus 10 feet. So if we were to give them that allowance, that takes you to 124 feet. Now, I was also told that we're not concerned about the people storing things in that building because the property owner who is selling the land also owns the building that's housing people's stuff. And so my question that has not been represented here is why we're not expecting that property owner to take those buildings down and sell AT&T a parcel that gives them more setback so that they don't have to be an estimated 10 feet from a dance studio, so that they don't have to be up on this gentleman's property with their fall zone, and God forbid, any additional hazards that could come, like we mentioned that, you know, I was born and raised in Missouri. I know that things don't just fall over in a storm, and that's not what you're dealing with. So, you know, if we're talking about high winds, like, it's probably not gonna politely fall down in its own little 114-foot radius and then have no other business elsewhere with anybody else's property. I know you've all seen storms. I know you've all had situations where you called your neighbors to figure out where the trampoline went. You know, we know that that's the situation. So if AT&T needs this property to make more money off of the customers in this area that they're not making enough money off of, there's really no argument for why they can't buy the whole property from Mr. Scott Langford and move the tower further south so that they can actually accommodate a setback that's reasonable, because we're talking about a 175-foot tower on a 60 by 80-foot plot. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Was there anyone else? 30 seconds. Well, turn the clock on. Get moving.
Lawyers can't say anything in 30 seconds.
Council, regarding the second application that was mentioned tonight with the landowner's signature, I would just request a continuance of today's hearing so that I can review that application. I requested it pursuant to a Sunshine Records request, and I didn't receive it. I'm not saying that it's not an authentic signature. I would just ask for some time so I can review it. The second item I want to address with respect to that is, as you stated, it was a second application that was submitted. The zoning code states, no more than one application for a special use permit for the same use shall be submitted by any applicant or owner within a 6-month period. What he just said tonight was the second application was submitted. If they messed up on the first one, they need to wait 6 months to file the second one. That would give all the other property owners time, to better voice their objections. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
That 6-month period he's referring to is only applicable if the special use permit is denied, and then they can't come back with the same application for 6 months.
Okay, so do you have any advice?
Yeah, a couple things. There were, and I'll try to remember them all. There were some comments made about, we haven't studied the effect of 5G or the radio frequency emissions on the health and safety of the neighbors. Federal law specifically prohibits us from from making a decision whether to grant or deny a permit on that basis. We're not even allowed to take that into consideration as long as they meet the federal law, federal regulations. So that, much as that may be a concern to some, that is not a factor that you should or are permitted to consider. Secondly, there were some questions or comments made about, we should require them to co-locate with another tower that's in the area. We used to have a provision in our code that had that sort of requirement, that we made them go out and talk to other nearby tower owners and made them go out and try to work out a deal with them. We removed that from the code whenever we redid our code, our total code a number of years ago. So that is not a valid reason to deny the permit because they haven't finally, at least I think this is finally, the comment was made that this is a business issue for AT&T, and maybe they could co-locate somewhere else, and they don't need to put up another tower here, and maybe they don't, maybe there isn't an absence of wireless service in this area. That is also not a reason for us to deny the permit. That's not a factor that you're allowed to consider whether this is a good business decision or a bad one. So I think I hit the high point.
And those things are because Missouri legislators,
Well, it's a combination of things. It's a combination of federal law and what your codes provide, as well as some state law.
So I believe, like what Mark, and I just, for clarification, like you said, there was a time when we required where the applicant came in, they had to go ahead, the city could require them to provide a study to determine
Right.
towers within the area to see if it was feasible for them to co-locate based on it. That was a party that was hired by the city, unrelated to the applicant, and the applicant had to pay for that study.
Right, and if you and some of you may remember this because I think you were around here at the time, there was an application, and it may have even been AT&T, to put a tower out on Sheltered Workshops property at West Main and whatever that is, I forget, but.
Impact.
And at that time, the code allowed us to do that, and so we required them to have a study to show where's the other towers in the area. Are there other towers in the area that you could co-locate on? And we did all of that, and that was at their expense. But we haven't had that provision in our code for a number of years anymore, and we're not allowed to consider that or require that.
And that's what I wanted to go ahead and hit on,
Right.
Mark, was the fact of in 2017, when we had our zoning code revised, that portion of that all had to be brought up to the federal and state standards.
Right.
And so it took a lot of the local control that you had
Right.
out of the code so that we didn't have that authority to make those decisions, like Mark said, based on those determinations. And so that's what you're kind of left with today, is just height, et cetera. I really, like I said, a lot of those things are taken out of our hands. I'll give one other example is Orchlands, even before the one that was out on Impact. The one
Right.
that's behind Orchlands out there off of Highway 100. They had to provide a study to go ahead and show whether or not it would be feasible or it would be best in interest as far as their coverage for if they went all the way back to the fire station up on 14th Street, co-locate there, put something up on the
Water
Crestview
tower.
Water Tower. Even had to go ahead and take a look at some of the billboards possibly that Carpenter has placed out there off of 47 and 100. So that was stuff we could make them go through at that time. You were not allowed even to require them or request them to put that much thought into it, if you want to put it that way.
and that's because of regulations beyond the
Right.
city of
That's
Washington.
exactly right.
Right.
I just want to make sure that it's clear. It's not something that we took out of the code for that. It's something that was required because of the state law, took that out of the local control.
And I guess federal law as well.
And yes, and federal law as well.
So Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, a yes or no vote, or a no vote is basically only for aesthetic purposes only?
Well, you can look at the safety of the tower and how the height of the tower affects the safety of the neighborhood. That you can look at. You can't look at the fact that there are antennas on the tower that emit radio frequencies. That is not a factor for your consideration. And you can, because it's a special use permit, you can look at things like the aesthetics of the fencing and that sort of thing, some of the aesthetics.
About lightning.
What's that?
About lightning.
That's not in your factors.
Are there any concerns about that fencing? I think the ordinance calls for landscaping. Do we specify?
It's been on a case-by-case basis, I think, in the past where we had it. Like I said, there was planting of trees. I remember at the one at Orchlands. I don't remember, Sal, I don't know, was there anything up there at the one by Impact?
I believe the one by Impact also did fencing. As we've approved them on case by case, they have to put one or the other, landscape screening or fencing.
I know when the one at Orchlands went up, there was some discussion about requiring that to be a disguised flagpole.
Right.
And I remember the neighbors in South, or whatever that is, Quail Run, came up and said, we don't want a flag there. That's why it's just a galvanized steel pole.
Okay, anything else from council members? I guess we need a motion to accept this into the minutes.
Make a motion.
We have a motion by Holtmeyer, seconded
I'll second it.
by Scornia to accept this item into the minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? By your vote, you accepted the item. Thank you.
An ordinance granting a special use permit for an AT&T cell tower located at 602 Alberta Lane in the city of Washington, Franklin County, Missouri. Scornia?
No.
Solenchuk?
No.
Patke?
No.
Pettit?
No.
Obermark?
Nope.
Holtmeyer?
Yes.
Wessels?
No.
Okay, so the answer is no, 6-1. By your vote, you disapproved of the ordinance. Okay. All right,
Report of department heads. Warming center update.
Mark?
Good evening, council. You have probably seen or heard of a fund drive to get some additional funds to help with the homeless. So along those lines, I just wanted to give you, bring you up to date where we are. You probably remember back in last part of October into November, we started making plans because of the inability of Mercy, who has been sheltering the homeless at night for a number of years. And due to COVID, they were unable to fulfill that mission anymore. So we brought clergy together, the Franklin County Homeless Task Force, some other volunteer organizations trying to come up with a solution of what we could do to keep people from freezing at night who are homeless. And we looked at a bunch of different ideas, maybe sharing duties of the homeless at different churches and at different nights and moving it around and using public buildings and bringing in volunteers to stay with the homeless, and we just talked about a whole bunch of options. And then finally, the easiest, if you will, was just to rent hotel rooms and put the homeless up for the night. Still using Mercy, they would be the agency that would vet those folks every night and make sure they weren't under the influence and had not caused trouble in the past, etc., and vet those folks and give them a voucher to go to the hotel to seek shelter for the night. We were basing all of our numbers on the initial fund drive off what Mercy experienced last year, and that was 208 nights of stay. So that, not 208 different people, but taking the people that were counting one, each night of stay as one person, there were 208 nights of stay last year. Well, with COVID, the economy, and even though winter has been relatively, mild to this point, we have been pretty much consistent since about a week or so before Christmas that every night has been just barely below freezing. So we have, used a lot of nights of stay, and we have had a lot more folks use the center, and therefore we went through the donations by about the middle to end of January. We were out of funds. due to that excess number. For example, we had 208 nights of stay all last year at Mercy. In January alone, there was 395 nights of stay. That's just in January. The demand far exceeded what we expected. So therefore, we went back to the community again. The Missourian was nice enough to write an article and, to help us solicit some funds. So that's where we are now. We've changed things a little bit in order to stretch the funds out a little bit during this exceptionally cold weather. Franklin County Homeless Task Force rented out 4 rooms, and we had the hotel take the beds out and put 4 cots in there in order to get more people in. So we could accommodate more people for less money, if you will. So with that, unless you have any questions specifically, I'm going to let Lindsay Jasper of the Franklin County Homeless Task Force address you folks.
Just a quick question. Do you think doing this, I mean, I'm all for, helping out the homeless. I'd be the first one to help out. But do you think that this is becoming a draw from people from don't even live in this town to come here and stay here? Because I, just like everybody else, see the people walking the streets, and I have never noticed them before until now. But now they're showing up, and are those the people that are going to stay at these places?
I asked the same question, Councilman, in some of our meetings, and I was told by representatives from Mercy that it has been such, where are the folks from? And for the past few years, even, before this, for years, they were saying that the residents or the folks that were staying were from Washington, primarily, they're from Franklin County, but they're saying primarily from Washington, Union, and St. Clair.
Okay.
So it's a countywide problem, and we realize that. And, we were just looking for the immediacy of keeping people from freezing on the street.
You answered my question, thanks.
Okay. Lindsay?
Lindsay?
Hi, I'm Lindsay Jasper.
You can pull that down.
So I think to kind of buddy up with your question too, I think we have the same worry. If we, are we drawing more people in? I do think the reason some of our numbers are so much higher also is related to COVID as well. That's, so we're trying to do just, a month-long survey to try to grab some of those numbers also, to see is it just Washington or is this the whole county, to see where people are coming from, to get a better grasp on, what the population is. So as compared to last year, for December, January, and February, we've had 562 total stays. We were originally renting like the spaces at about $38 a person, and so our way of the cots is try to, again, to like spread that out. So we are, it is very costly, but it seemed to be the only way, just with the lack of personnel, and just, it was unsafe to ask volunteers to man an empty building. We didn't have like people trained to do those things. So it is costly, and it's just something that we've, it's been fairly successful. I wouldn't say it's been perfect. But with the amount of stays versus the incidents, it's been pretty low. So we're just looking at ways to try and continue to raise funds to support it, to get us through this. And then, our goal would be to continue to work together with all those team members to see like what's the next best thing to come up with for next year. So, any other questions?
Can you tell us how the rules go? They have to go to Mercy first, and then how it works after that?
Yeah, so they have to check in at Mercy Emergency Department by 9 p.m., where they kind of vet them. They have to fill out, we have an expectation, it's a rules page of no pets, no stealing, just so it's all those common sense things that are lined out that they have to agree to. Like I said, then Mercy vets them, they give them a voucher, and they give them like a bagged breakfast. And then they go to the American Inn Hotel, and they can stay there till 7 a.m., and then they have to leave. So they have to do that process every single night that the warming center is open.
You said at American Inn, there are 4 per room. Is that what I heard you say?
Right now, we didn't start out that way, but right now, that's how we're doing it, to stretch the funds. So it's men in one room, women in another room, to try and,
Does, if one of the homeless people tears up one of the rooms, is that the cost to the?
it is the cost to, the funds that we have for this. So we've had to pay a security deposit twice at least. Yeah,
What about incidents of violence?
Pardon?
What about violence? We screening? I know you walk through the rules, but
Yeah, it's hard because we don't do background checks. We do have a list of people that are no longer allowed. So if you break the rule, we work Mercy, the American Inn, and then a couple of the other partners, we all communicate. So if Jane Smith goes and destroys a room, then that person is now put on the list. Mercy is aware of who it is, and they're no longer allowed. I think there are always safety concerns. So, we work closely with the police department also. The hotel just has to call if there's any kind of a concern.
So they're asked to leave at 7 in the morning, and they can't come back till 9 p.m. with a voucher?
Correct.
Where do they go during the day?
They just go like public library, any
Yeah, we have
other.
our own- This is the Libraries of Warming Center. That's one option.
Yeah, thank you. So wherever else they can go throughout the day. That's why you see people walking around, I think. Walmart, whatever place they can go to without, that they're allowed to.
Have you been able, since that article came out in the paper, I know you were trying to collect some funds to extend the winter. Has that been successful?
Yes, we've had, and I've been at home with my kids on snow days, but we've had definitely had some money coming in. We've had some coming in. I don't have a total of how much has come in, but I know that they've had 110 donors come in since then. Now, some of it might be like $10, $50, they're in smaller, large increments, but we have had some people respond to that for sure. Any other questions?
Is there any data to show whether these people are, repeat? I guess my question always was with the homeless shelter before was, some people don't want any other help. They want that free room and they don't have any other ambition to do anything else. Do you see that, or is there any data to support that or not?
That's why separately, we're trying to do a count for this whole month. So we have a survey that's gone out through to the whole county. So we're asking anybody that works, any agency to participate. So we're trying to grab that data to say, hey, if we have an agency, would you be interested? Because there is always that group or population that just wants the night, that they're not interested in anything else. But we also don't have, aside from volunteers, somebody to sit down and work with you and kind of direct that. So we're trying to grab that right now. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay.
I'm being asked if you all are interested in making a donation. I forgot that was my major role tonight.
I reminded Mark, so.
Okay.
That's funny.
So, in the discussions, as we've been going along, meeting for months here, part of the churches, in our community have just been fantastic as far as, kicking funds into this. We've had numerous churches that have kicked in between $2,000 and $3,000 a piece. We have one church that's kicking in that's raising $500 a month, I believe, towards it.
Yes, yeah, we've had one that's donated already $3,000, and I have a check with me now that's for another $1,000. So our churches are really some of the bigger donors.
Yeah, so I'll be very frank with you. On those meetings, the church leaders were asking me, if the city would consider putting some skin in the game. So that's why we're talking about this.
In your meetings, has there been any talk down the road of any kind of job placement or anything that you can do for them to?
So that's kind of a separate, like from the warming center, the homeless task force has a couple of subcommittees out specifically working on that. So we are, we have the career center and several like temp agencies and organizations, but we lack like the organized effort of sitting down, working one-on-one with someone. Okay, what are your goals? Do you want employment? Yes. Do you need some education? So we're in the midst of trying to start an agency and gather funds to have someone be able to coordinate that. Everybody right now is still a volunteer. I'm a school social worker, you know, during the day. So that is the goal, to sit down with people if they want to and start to hash that out with them.
Thank you.
You know, and long-term, we know that there needs to be at a minimum a position countywide. You know, the community's all getting together countywide. It is not a Washington problem. It's not a St. Clair problem. It's not a Union problem. It's countywide, folks. So, you know, if we could get a handle on this and had somewhat a minimum to start to coordinate to get things going, would be helpful. But, you know, otherwise, as you bring up, Steve, you know, it could be an endless cycle, you know.
Mark, help me with my memory. Did we submit something to the county with the CARES Act or something, asking for some funding towards this?
Yes, we did. We checked in. I talked about the volunteer organizations. We do have some of them, and a request was made for pre-approval, like we've done some of the other pre-approval processes. We wanted to get pre-approval for some funding towards this, and it was denied CARES fund. Yes, it was determined that this was not a CARES eligible item.
So it wouldn't have been COVID-related or something
Yeah,
like that, which you just
well, yeah,
said that.
it wasn't CARES, it wasn't COVID-related. I think it was viewed more of a social problem than it was a COVID problem.
Okay. And you felt like that maybe the one reason the numbers are up is because COVID has certainly played a role in this.
I think there's definitely the potential for that. The other side of that is, if we didn't have COVID, Mercy would still be able to have their warming center open. They're closed right now, my understanding is due to space because of COVID.
Right.
So.
Okay. All right, thank you.
I'll give you a little bit of the police perspective. We deal with homeless every day. We look for how we can keep them warm. We deal with them every night. We transport them to the hospital if we have to. We find them and they'll go. We transport them to American Inn from there, just so they don't have to walk in 0-degree weather. This past weekend, we've let a couple of them come in the lobby, get warmed up. But with the police, so they don't like to hang around. They got warm and then they left. But we've kept that open for them. We are looking at the safety of citizens, the safety of people in our community. And with the cold that we're having, they've got to have shelter. We can't let them freeze in some business's doorstep or under a bridge. We had a report the other day of good old Pete that everybody's familiar with in town, lifting up a manhole cover on a sewer and going down the sewer to stay warm. So that's how desperate it gets sometimes. But we will continue to serve them the best we can. And yes, there's been incidents of violence. Those are people that we've dealt with regularly, and we deal with them. We take care of that because we want them to be safe also. So you have any questions for me? I'd be glad to.
Any questions of Chief? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I would just like to make sure everyone understands that, this has not been a city project. The city chief and I recognize the issues and wanted to coordinate with Franklin County Homeless Task Force to address the issue. you know, just to solve the problem for this winter, the immediate issue.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
And
Thank you.
Along those lines, if I may, you know, we have a guest here in the audience tonight, you know, Mr. Eric Eloff, president of Mercy, who has been sponsoring the overnight shelter for years. So I'd like to entertain Mr. Eloff to come forward and say a few words.
Mayor Lucy, members of the council, it's good to be with you. I just wanted to say a few things. First, you know, we made some decisions this year to try to innovate, to take care of the homeless in our county in a way that would also protect our patients and coworkers from COVID. And had COVID not been around, we would do what we did last year, which was bring them into the hospital near the cafeteria, supervise them, make sure they had linen, things like that, and food. And it worked really well. The difference was supervision. And you know, when you screen them and send them to a motel, at some point you lose that supervision, and you hope they make good judgments. Most of them do. Not all of them did. And that's why we ended up with some of the stories in the newspaper. But I think it's the right thing to do. We don't have one place in the county or the city where we can call a shelter for situations like this. But the hospital happens to be open at night, so we were happy to do it, and it's consistent with our mission. So I'm hoping that this time next year I'm giving you a completely different report about how we're trying to get folks who stay with us in job streams at the hospital. We tried, by the way. Steve, we had one sign up for our housekeeping. Fortunately, didn't last. There's a certain level of mental illness that goes with homelessness. It's not one-to-one, but it's present, and until you address an underlying mental health issue or a substance abuse issue, it's tough to get them in employment streams. The main reason I wanted to address you just briefly, though, I came here tonight to thank you. I know you're going to revisit the ordinance around the mask mandate, and I just wanted to tell you that I'm very proud of the work that you did. I'm so honored that you listened to Dr. Reekers and the metric information he brought forward, that helped guide your decision on when to have the mask mandate and when to turn it off. There is definitely a correlation between when you did that and the county did that, evidenced by this vertical line I'm showing you, and the drop in the rate of spread in our county and in our city that transpired into a drop in hospitalizations and death. So you are to be commended, and I didn't want to be the guy who only showed up to complain or beg you to do something, but I also want to be the person who said, you know, you called it right, thank you. Yes, it was a nuisance, and nobody likes these. I don't like these any more than you do. But what you did made a difference, and I think you needed to hear from one of the leaders in the community that you made a difference, and you probably saved lives. Can I prove that to you? No. Can I tell you today that we had a precipitous drop in hospitalizations in January and now February, and a precipitous drop in deaths? Yes, absolutely. And remember, hospitalizations and deaths are a lagging factor what's happening in the community. So you are to be commended, and that's why I wanted to show up today. I learned a lot about towers today, too. That was great.
You know, I think the last time you were here, we had a long public hearing time.
Yeah, you really took some bullets in August, and
Yeah.
I'm just telling you, that was a brutal meeting, and I know you didn't sign up for this gig for that kind of pressure on you. You certainly aren't doing it for the pay. You're doing it because you're good civic duty, you have a good civic hearts, and you want this community to be better, and that's fantastic. You probably never in your wildest imagination knew that you'd be on a council in the middle of a 100-year pandemic, caught in the middle between personal liberties and personal safety. So that was brutal, but I can thank you so much for the decision you made in November. I think it made a difference.
All right, thank you.
Any questions of me before I go?
All right.
That was it. All right, thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much, Eric.
Mhm.
Thank you, Eric. John, you have something?
Yes, Council. I have a couple items. Earlier this morning, Councilman Overmark requested that I give you an update on the airport hangars, kind of where we're sitting. I think the last time we discussed, the number of hangars was a little bit in flux just due to building materials and things, and that still holds true. I received an update from CMT, our consultant. They are anticipating to have 90% design plans completed this week, which is a couple weeks behind schedule, but they should be completed this week. They did actually have a meeting this morning regarding an airport in Southwest Missouri that did report high hangar prices. Something they did not anticipate, and they're making budgetary decisions based upon the bids as they came in. Now, what we are proposing to do is do a base bid with a double additive alternate. So we will bid this as an 8-hanger situation, which we do feel like we would definitely come in within budget. And then the contractor has the option to add 2 additional hangars to make it 10, or an additional 2, so 4 total, to make it 12. The reason why we do that is I don't think I could come, if the bids come in high, we would have to make a decision at that time, do we move forward with the project or come up with the money? So this gives us all those options on the table, and I think it's probably the wisest thing to do. It also allows for the contractor, if he wants a little additional work, to bid it a little more aggressively. So that's the update as far as where that goes. As far as the schedule goes, the schedule that was originally put out had a March 5th final bid package. Like I said, we are a couple weeks behind on that, so probably somewhere middle March, maybe end of March. And that would have an end of April bid opening, and then construction would be this fall. So again, we're moving. Prices are all over the place. I know metal wasn't as affected as what lumber and things were, but they still are being affected. So if you have any specific questions, I can answer them, or feel free to always reach out to me where things sit.
Good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, perfect.
John?
Couple more items. You good? Okay, sorry. Yeah, and then just FYI, what's going around town, we got a couple water main breaks. We had one on Stafford Street yesterday. Your water main crew started that break 9 a.m., finished up at 5 p.m. So that was a substantial water main break, 8-inch main that they worked sub-zero temperatures. If you drove by, you would actually see what water warm comes out of the ground looks like in sub-zero temperatures. It's actually pretty interesting. So your guys worked that. They also had one on 8th Street today. We would probably anticipate a few more, as things kind of warm up. As things will progress, in the 50s and 60s, those do increase typically. So obviously working conditions are a lot better than yesterday's event in the snow and the ice. So anyway, just a couple things on water. We're also working on trying to get notification out to property owners a little bit better using Facebook, those type of things. So we'll do better trying to get things out. Keep in mind, your water main operators were also your snowplow drivers the night before. So it does tend to be a challenge. And then probably the most exciting thing is trash recycling pickup. So I just received an update about 40 minutes ago on the weather. They still are, I think we're in a winter weather advisory. The forecast is on track, up to 2 inches, somewhere around there. Mark, I'm not a weatherman, so somewhere around there. That would have slick conditions all day tomorrow. It would have been an anticipated, probably missed day again. So we made the call this morning to get notification out as fast as we possibly could, to scramble to come up with a solution to get trash picked up this week. That solution was Monday and Tuesday's pickup will be on Thursday in anticipation for the weather that's coming in tomorrow. Wednesday, Thursdays would be on Friday, and then Fridays would be on Saturday. We canceled recycling for this week for the sole reason of the recycling truck is an automated situation. It's a longer truck. It's robotic arm. If you've seen how it's done, it is not manual pickup. I was concerned about the forecast for Thursday with the anticipated snow event that I wanted to make sure that they had enough manpower to get the trash picked up. As always will be, trash is the #1 priority. Recycling, cardboards, those type of things are clean. They're in a can. You can make room for them. Keep in mind, we have options. The recycling center is open. It will continue to be open. So if somebody does have a situation where They have to get rid of their recycling this week. The recycling center is open. Keep in mind, break down your boxes, get more room, and this is a last case scenario, I guess, for some. But all recycling is recyclable, but it was also trash not 9 months ago. Keep in mind, you did not have a recycling option prior to June of 2020. It was not there. So I know you recall the green bins, but remember that was suspended when the price of recycling went in the tank, basically, and there was no scenario to where we could afford to continue that way. This is a huge step forward, and cardboard curbside is, although we're working through some of these weather-related situations, that's a big step in the right direction. So I would just ask that everyone be patient as we work through these things.
John, is a recycle center included? Can you dump your single stream
Yes.
can out there?
There are, I think 6. I think I upped it to 6. But yes, 6 single stream bays are there. Now, we've had some issues with that. That operation is 100% funded by your recycling, trash, and landfill. Okay, so it's funded by that. So we have a person there. We pay for those bins that get utilized. That's open to the entire county. So you're subsidizing the county's recycling, just so you understand that. So what happens is we'll get an influx of single stream recycling that those bins will be full, on any given night. Now, I wouldn't anticipate that this week just due to the weather. So we're, as an option. But I just want to point that out. I mean, that's something we haven't necessarily discussed, but it's a single stream operation. Tony's aware we could subsidize it with some additional 2-yard dumpsters if we have to, but we're doing everything we can to get caught up. Again, trash is the #1 priority. So as far as obstructions and those type of things, which I know we've been dealing with on a case-by-case basis, I've told Waste Connections that they need to fog the manpower to get the trash picked up this week. There may be, we're in some discussions this afternoon of an option maybe to try to run recycling maybe next week, but I do not want to commit to that until weather tomorrow. So I'm trying to get caught up. Right now, what I do know is the next recycling date is March 1st. I know that sitting here tonight, but hopefully we'll improve on that.
Any questions of John? Thank you.
And then I think that's all I had. Sorry, Chief, go ahead.
Council, this is just to keep you informed. There's a local doctor that's going to put a memorial up several places in town about gun safety in children.
Chief.
About gun safety in children. There were 46 children killed in the state of Missouri in 2020 by gun deaths. So the memorial will recognize that, and it promotes gun safety. So being the chief of police, and I'm very concerned about gun safety, and especially with children, we're going to go on our Washington Police Department Facebook and do some postings and some information to the public about parents, how do you store your guns, what do you do with your guns, children, what do you do if you see a gun, and get just that information for gun safety out there. And if anyone wants one, we have a gun lock they can come to the police station and get. It is a wire that will fit through the barrel and secure the gun so it can't be fired. So I just want to keep you informed.
Okay, very good. Didn't know you had
Gun
those.
safes, do you?
Do we have a gun safe? Do we want one?
They're expensive.
They are very
Okay, thank you, Chief.
Yes. Mayor, I apologize. I skipped over citizen comments.
You what?
I skipped over citizen comments
Oh, I'm sorry.
at the bottom of the page. Citizens' comments?
Is there anyone here who would like to address the council on any item that is not on the agenda?
Hi, I'm Carrie Klinke, 1090 Caroline Drive. And I am going to be real honest and frank. I am way new, and I am learning each week that I'm here and each day that I am studying city government and that type of thing. One of the things that concerns me is that there was a little blurb in the paper about this mask mandate. And most of you probably know I'm running for council. I am not running on mask or no mask. That is not That's not my thing to fall on. But my concern is that the city of Washington is the only city in the area that has a mandate. The other municipalities do not. The numbers are coming from the county and the hospital, and our hospital serves more than just the city of Washington. Washington serves the other communities with shopping, and so people are coming here, but I know that there are also a lot of people that are not coming to Washington because of the mandate. I want to urge you to consider, use critical thinking, look at all of the facts. I know that Mercy has something to gain from all of this. Use critical thinking. Look at the flu numbers. Look at the other numbers compared to your COVID numbers. And I know from my information, there are 2 COVID patients in Mercy Hospital right now. 2. One, I believe, is from the Washington area. The other one, I do not. But is 2 patients in the hospital enough to take away the liberties from humans, from our citizens, that have a brain and that can choose what is right for them? I don't think it is ever up to the city council, the city government, to enforce health regulations on me. And I'm going to go on a stretch. If this was really about health, then McDonald's probably needs to be closed. You're not telling me to not drink soda. You're not telling me to do these things. You're not promoting or helping me get my zinc and the other things that I'm helping with. For me, I can't wear a mask. So you see me and I use the exemption and I take advantage of that because I would start coughing within just a couple of minutes. But there are a lot of people that are hurting, and we have to look at what's happening to our children and what is happening to them in their mental state and what all is happening with the masks when you mandate them. I am not opposed to people wearing masks. I am opposed to the city mandating them. So I please urge you to whatever metrics you're going to look at tonight. From my perspective, this is an ordinance that you guys are going to discuss between yourselves, and then you're going to vote on it and make decisions for our community. And I just urge you to consider that and consider the responsibility that you have to uphold our government and what our government is supposed to do. That's it.
Thank you. Was there anyone else who wanted to address the council tonight? Okay. All right.
Ordinances, resolutions. An ordinance accepting the bid from Joe Machins Ford Lincoln, Columbia, Missouri, and to approve the purchase of a 2022 Ford F-550 regular cab and chassis 4x4 with dump body, plow, and spreader by the city of Washington, Missouri.
Introduced by Councilman Holtmeyer.
Good evening, Council. First, I apologize. We didn't get a chance to talk about this during the workshop meeting, but it is an item we did have budgeted. It's a replacement vehicle for a 1 1/4 ton dump truck. It's one with a salt spreader and a snow plow on. It's going to be replacing our 2003 model, and it's got 128,000 miles on it. We did buy this off the MoDOT state bid. It came in really good pricing, and I'm pretty pleased with it. And going to go on from there, and we'll sell the other one on Purple Wave after this one shows up. These
Can you really get a 2022 right now?
I'm sorry?
You can really get a 2022 right now?
Yeah. No.
It's a 22 model.
Yeah. Well, we're only ordering it now, but it won't show up till later this year. I guess they're aiming for
September. Okay.
October timeframe.
Okay.
Yeah. These trucks, not only do they provide salt and plowing operations, especially with all the cul-de-sacs we have now in the smaller areas, but in the summertime, we use them for everything from patching, yard waste, rock work. They're just very versatile.
Okay. Any other questions of Tony?
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you, Tony.
Good job on the streets.
Yeah.
An ordinance accepting the bid from Joe Machins Ford Lincoln, Columbia, Missouri, and to approve the purchase of a 2022 Ford F-550 regular cab and chassis 4x4 with dump body, plow, and spreader by the City of Washington, Missouri. Scornia?
Yes.
Stolenchuk? Patke?
Yes.
Pettit?
Yes.
Obermark?
Yes.
Holtmeyer?
Yes.
Wessels?
Aye.
By your vote, you approve the ordinance. Thank you.
An ordinance amending section 265.110 of the Code of the City of Washington, Missouri.
Introduced by Councilman Solentrup. Wayne?
Good evening, council. I'm here again this meeting to discuss the new pool fees at the Agnes Nolting Aquatics Complex. And as we went over at the last meeting, first meeting of this month, we had several meetings. A subcommittee was formed, including myself and the city administrator, along with some park board members that were here, but just bailed on me due to the length of the meeting tonight. They did come in support of this. But anyways, so we're looking at the new fees for the aquatic center would be the $7 daily admission fee for anyone 3 and over. A $50 punch card, which would be 10 punches. If you do the math, it would be $5 a punch. That would be available after June 1st. Now, this is a little bit different than what we had discussed last time. And I'll get to the reason here in just a second. And then also, the third fee would be a $500 after-hours pool rental fee with a $200 deposit, 2-hour limit. The $50 punch card, which would be 10 punches, staff and I threw around the concept of having a grand opening promotion with the new pool. I talked to the Parks Director in St. Charles, and they did this when they built their pool, and it was pretty successful. And so that grand opening discount would be a one-time discount on a pool punch card, which would be $85 for 20 passes. So you'd be getting a $15 discount. One-time discount per family, one per family, be available to June 1st, and then after that, we would go to the 10 punches for $50 or the 20 punches for $100, which is what we discussed last time. Staff and I did a little bit of research, and we went back through old Parks and Rec program brochures, and all the way back to 2001, pool fees were listed in those brochures. Prior to that, I guess they didn't list them, at least from what we saw. And the pool fees, the current fees of $250 and $4, have been the same since 2001. Haven't changed since that time. So, also went back and looked at the net operating losses over the last 5 years, so 2015 through 2019. And we average about $125,000 a year in losses. So, I guess any questions from you all about what we're looking at here?
Any questions?
Pool's looking good.
It's coming along, yeah. Still has schedule.
A little chilly to swim now.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Okay.
And
So these fees would have to go into the ordinance, so we're looking at approving you all to approve the amended ordinance. So, thank you.
all right.
So when would you start selling the punch pass?
After this meeting.
After this meeting,
If
right.
it's approved, yeah, we'd start. That was kind of the hurry. We need to start marketing it.
So from now until June 1st, you can buy a 20 punch card for $85 for a grand opening purpose. After June 1st, you can buy 10 punches for $50 or 20 punches for $100 or pay the daily amount.
Correct.
That's right. Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for hanging around, even though you're park board.
Tell Sparky and
Yeah,
Gavin they could
right.
have waited 5 more minutes.
Yeah.
An ordinance amending section 265.110 of the Code of the City of Washington, Missouri. Scornia?
Yes.
Stolenchuk? Patke?
Yes.
Pettit?
Yes.
Obermark?
Yes.
Holtmeyer?
Aye.
Wessels?
Aye.
By your vote, you approve the ordinance.
An
Thank
ordinance
you.
amending Schedule 5 restricted parking Table V-C-no parking for more than 2 hours of the Code of the City of Washington, Missouri.
Holtmeyer.
Introduced by Councilman Holtmeyer.
Okay,
John?
council. Yeah, this was an item that was brought to our attention, actually Tony, I think, brought to our attention. We put the stop signs up there on Market Street. But there's a stop sign, or a 2-hour parking sign located right here on northbound Market Street as you approach Main Street. I'm circling right there with my cursor. But, and Tony brought up a good point. Well, why does it exist in the first place? We talked about the traffic committee. We do believe it was put in place whenever this area, this block, was essentially more of a commercial area. It had an antique store, various other items, and that no parking zone actually extended all the way down to Front Street. So what this does is it just repeals that ordinance or that no parking zone. It's a residential area now. 2-hour parking is really counterproductive for what it operates as now. So it's a pretty, it's really a cleanup item. We also were made aware late today of some additional parking concerns down on Front Street. I'll kind of drive down here a little bit so you guys can see. But there was a commercial business that did open. I think it's some sort of a distillery or brewery of some sort. But at the corner in this building. But there's some side distance issues as you approach the intersection. People were kind of parking, as you go up the hill southbound, and then some parking was occurring by this hydrant as well. Hydrant parking is an obvious separate ordinance violation, but we'll be talking about that at the next traffic committee meeting to try to alleviate those things too. So we're trying to play catch up with the changing scene, I guess, in the downtown area. So this is just like I said, a pretty straightforward cleanup item.
Any questions or comments? Okay.
An ordinance amending Schedule V, restricted parking, Table V-C-no parking for more than 2 hours of the Code of the City of Washington, Missouri. Scornia?
Yes.
Solentrop? Patke?
Yes.
Pettit?
Yes.
Obermark?
Yes.
Holtmeyer?
Aye.
Wessels?
Aye.
By your vote, you approve the ordinance. Thank
And-
you.
An ordinance approving a boundary adjustment for West Hill subdivision, Lot 2, in the City of Washington, Franklin County, Missouri.
Patke.
Introduced by Councilman Patke.
Yep, there you go. All right, this is a request for a boundary adjustment right at the entrance of Windy Hills subdivision. It's currently 3 lots as it sits today. There is a shared barn accessory structure in the back. You can see there's access to each. A couple of weeks ago, the applicants, both owners, went to the Board of Adjustment to get a variance in order to put a property line right down the middle and have a 0 lot line along a shared wall in there. And the Board of Adjustment did approve that, so the next step would be get a boundary adjustment approved. So then it now looks like this. This is what they're requesting tonight, to have Lot 1R and 4R, and you can see the property line that splits the accessory structure there. So, if you have any questions, I'd be happy
Mark,
to
you're
answer.
shaking your head no.
Hmm?
Are you shaking your head no?
I have no comment.
Is this conflict
Yes,
of
I have
interest?
no comment.
Okay, I get it, yeah.
That's a relative and a former law partner, so I have no comment.
Okay.
So they're okay with it, sharing the barn?
Yeah, they've requested it. It went to the Board of Adjustment and was approved, so.
Okay. Any questions or comments?
All right, thank you.
An
Okay.
ordinance approving a boundary adjustment for West Hill subdivision, Lot 2, in the City of Washington, Franklin County, Missouri. Scornia?
Yes.
Solentrop? Patke?
Sure.
Pettit?
Yes.
Obermark?
Aye.
Holtmeyer?
Aye.
Wessels?
Aye.
By your vote, you approve the ordinance. Thank you.
An ordinance approving a boundary adjustment for Schrader's second subdivision, Plat 2, in the City of Washington, Franklin County, Missouri.
Solentrop.
Introduced by Councilman Solentrop.
All right, this is a request for another boundary adjustment and technically plat amendment. They're going to be requesting a partial vacation. So currently, these are 2 houses here. you can see the house that is on First Street, and there's a house on Third Street. Right now, the owner of this home actually utilizes this garage, this detached garage across the alley as their own, and they are purchasing it from this property owner to the south. So they contacted us and said, hey, how can we amend this property line so that this garage is actually part of their parcel? We didn't necessarily have an issue with their proposed plot layout because the lots are large enough that if you took away from here, you would still have the 6,000 square foot minimum on Third Street, so that wasn't a concern. The only thing we wanted to point out was that we needed to make sure that even though they're not utilizing it today, this is a public alley, and these two lots, this is Lot 1 and Lot 2, do have access to that alley if they wanted it, and so we didn't want to take that away from them. And so what we recommended, and the applicants agreed, so this is the proposed new lot, to include that garage, and they do have the setbacks from there, so it's more than 5 feet away. There is a cross-access easement through here that maintains access for lots 1 and 2, and so that way that the property owner can never cut that off from those property owners. So you won't see any physical change there other than the fact that this garage that they've been utilizing will now be on the same tax ID as them. So.
Did that garage originally belong to the,
I believe, yeah, originally it was it was always part of the house. It's always been on the lot of Third Street.
okay.
But over the years, I guess this person has been utilizing it and they just want to make it legally on the same parcel. So.
Okay. Any questions or comments?
All right, thank you.
An ordinance approving a boundary adjustment for Schrader's second subdivision, Plat 2 in the city of Washington, Franklin County, Missouri. Scornia?
Yes.
Stolenchuk?
Yes.
Patke?
Yes.
Pettit?
Yes.
Obermark?
Yes.
Holtmeyer?
Aye.
Wessels?
Aye.
By your vote, you approve the ordinance. Thank you.
An ordinance repealing ordinance number 20-13207 and enacting in lieu thereof an ordinance establishing the requirement to wear a face mask in certain locations in order to prevent or limit the spread of the COVID-19 disease, authorizing the adoption of further orders for the implementation of the ordinance, and fixing the time when this ordinance shall become effective.
Holtmeyer.
Introduced by Councilman Holtmeyer.
If I can explain a little bit, and then Mark and both Marks can clarify if I get anything, if I say anything in error. Essentially, what this ordinance does is that, as mentioned, it would repeal the ordinance that you passed back in November, was the original? And what it does, is if you go to section 10, this deals with the 3 different matrix that we use to go ahead and determine how long the mask ordinance would stay in effect. And if you'll remember, if you need 2 out of the 3 were in the red, and you needed to, well, let me back up. If 2 out of the 3 were not in the red, then essentially for 4 weeks in a row, then the mask mandate would be lifted. So as of February 1st was the first report that we had where we had 2 out of the 3 that were not in the red and were good to go. On February the 8th, however, the state had a backup of cases that they had for death rates that got dumped into Franklin County into that data pool. And those were out 4 or 5 weeks that did not reflect a 2-week period. And so we looked at what the hospital had with regards to that. Mark got that from Eric, and it did go ahead and stay in the yellow in that case. And so February 8th, if you use the 3rd metric, which is the 14-day for the deaths, and you use the Mercy Hospital, well, then 2 out of the 3 would not be in the red. And so therefore, you'd have 2 weeks in a row of not having 2 out of the 3 in the red. So, and then as of yesterday, we had another report that Mark had, and that, as we've said, the numbers are trending down. And so that was the 15th, and that would mark the 3rd week.
Correct.
So in essence, if you pass this ordinance, we will use the 3rd metric, which will be determined by Mercy Hospital and not the Franklin County Department of Health. And by the 22nd, next Monday, or, well, right after the council, well, we wouldn't have the council meeting then. You don't need one. But that would be his fourth report, and you have the possibility of the mask mandate being lifted then as of the 22nd. If you do not vote in favor of the ordinance that repeals the one back from November, then we will start counting 15th, which would have been yesterday, would be the first week.
Correct.
And then you'd have the 22nd, and then you'd have to have March the 1st, and then March the 8th. So in essence, the mask mandate would stay in effect until March the 8th, if the numbers continue in the trend that we're seeing.
And we don't get any more data dumps, if you will,
Right.
from the state.
But at least as far as with this, it would take care of the death data dump, which is what the problem was on February the 8th, because it reflected back to 4 and 5 weeks ago, which is not what the intent of the ordinance was to begin with. That's the reason why we looked at that data change or whatever as far as that goes. So again, if you pass this, you have the potential to lift that mandate after next Monday.
Correct.
If not, then we keep the same metrics that we have in place, and you have the potential then, the earliest would be March the 8th.
If you did not get a data dump.
We didn't get
If we don't
another
pass
dump.
this.
And that is not to diminish these deaths. These deaths occurred. All you have to do is look in the paper the past month and see the number in the obituaries. They occurred, but they, just the manner in which they're being reported now, they're being reported in bunches, which unfairly skews what's actually happening in the community. Things are getting better, and you look at yesterday's report, and you see 27 deaths, and it's
All over the map.
it's just over a 10-day period. It's just not accurate at all as to what's happening in the community, and we can get these numbers locally from Mercy.
So on the 1st of February, we met our old,
We met that was the first, week 1, that we had 2 out of the
Okay.
3.
so by making this retro to the 8th,
Correct.
you're saying we would now have 3?
Gaining.
Yes, as of yesterday, we would have 3, is correct.
That's why you see section 10 of the ordinance is highlighted, or it's in bold.
When was that data dump was that done that week?
There was 17 deaths reported Friday.
27.
And there was another 10 reported a
Saturday.
week to 10 days prior, prior to that, yeah.
Which they all dated back to like December the 8th.
Yeah, I think even one of them was back to November. Yeah. So it's just the manner in which the state has been reporting, and then
Well,
unfortunately.
the state reports it, but they just don't report it the way they should.
They're not
According to our
doing it
metric, they don't report it weekly.
on
They
a
report it
timely-
whenever they
on a
get a bunch
timely
of them
manner.
together, then they report it to the county.
That's correct.
Yep.
So it won't change the actual verification of if the person passed away from COVID. That won't change at all. It's just a matter of when the state
Yeah,
was getting
I'm,
That comes from Mercy.
regardless, it may be, a matter of, which test they use, if they use the PCR method or they use a rapid test or whatever, but we would still be counting COVID positives.
Right.
And that's part of what you're seeing too in the reports is, a while back, they started probables. And if you will, the only test that the state apparently, considers accurate or approves is the PCR. And if you use the antibody test, those are showing up as probables, that list of probable deaths you're seeing.
In essence, this gives us a better reading for what our community is and what happened at Mercy Hospital.
Yes, that's
bottom
the
line.
whole objective, like I said, because what's going on now is unfairly skewing the numbers.
Real-time data.
Yep.
We passed a proclamation in like July or August suggesting people to wear a mask. Will that still be in effect?
That hasn't changed. That's just a resolution of support to go ahead and do that. We will be talking until These numbers, we discussed it at the department head meeting today. We'll be talking about City Hall, public offices, et cetera, and those policies. We've got some time yet to go ahead and do that. But we'll be discussing that and then reporting back to you later. But to answer your question, that resolution doesn't change. That was just supporting those that
we encourage the use of
we encourage the
masks.
use of wearing masks, correct.
Yes.
So Mark, the first two criteria depend on county data.
Correct,
The
Yes,
third one goes to Mercy.
correct.
correct.
Well, the masks are obviously working, and I recommend people continue to wear them, but I want to use accurate numbers.
Thank you, Councilman. That's the objective here. And the other objective was to minimize the impact of healthcare. We've done that. As you point out, it worked.
I guess the most encouraging numbers that we saw was when this trend started, was the fact that the daily positive cases were still up at that time, but they have dropped off.
I would never have believed that the number of daily new cases would have dropped off as rapidly as they have.
You go from 100 plus to 20. That's significant.
Any other comments or questions? Thoughts?
Ready? All right. An ordinance repealing ordinance number 20-13207 and enacting in lieu thereof an ordinance establishing the requirement to wear a face mask in certain locations in order to prevent or limit the spread of the COVID-19 disease, authorizing an adoption of further orders for the implementation of the ordinance and fixing the time when this ordinance shall become effective. Scornia?
Yes.
Solondra?
Yes.
Patke?
Yes.
Pettit?
Yes.
Obermark?
Yes.
Holtmeyer?
Yes.
Wessels?
Aye.
By your vote, you approve the ordinance. So we'll be using Mercy numbers. For the third metric. All right. Okay, thank you.
Commission, committee, and board reports. Preliminary plat approval for Plat 6 of the overlook at Weber Farms to construct 26 more single-family homes.
All right, this is the last application for the overlook, and I apologize to Vic and Michelle having to wait so long in between these ordinances. This is how it falls on the agenda, but this is the last phase. It is 26 more lots to bring you up to 110. And the overlook, it does connect in 3 areas here that we always appreciate. They already had their required for the amount of lots, and so these connection points are just above and beyond what the fire code requires, and so we appreciate that and always like to see a grid as best we can. So there is a pond or lake proposed as well. Stormwater retention is actually already handled in here, so this is above and beyond as well of stormwater requirements, and I know John in his office appreciates that, of having over retention. That is shown in common ground, and there are easements around here as well for maintenance. The only comment we had was that there were not easements shown for the sewer on lots 100 through 104 in the rear here. And so we just recommended that when that final plat comes through, that has to be, required that has to be shown in a 10-foot easement. Other than that, we had no other comments or changes to this. It did go to the planning and zoning last week, and they voted unanimously to approve it as well.
Any questions or comments?
Thank you.
So we'll need a motion
I'll
to
make a motion.
approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Sullentrup, seconded by Patke, to approve the preliminary plat. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? By your vote, you approve the plat. Thank you.
Mayor's report.
I was just going to give a shout out to our crews. Obviously, they worked long hours with snow removal through the night last night, and we're back on Main Street this evening, hauling the snow away, which is normally what how the operation goes. So they were out there in brutal weather, and at the same time, and John mentioned it, we had 2 water main breaks during this severe weather, and our crew was out there wet.
Yeah, I would just
Cold
add that, you know, the street department is the one that heads up snow removal, but water, wastewater, and parks, we cannot do that operation without those people. So I know Tony's the one who heads all that up. He coordinates everything through them, but it's really Kevin and Wayne that provide that additional support that we
Sure.
need to get those things done. So focus always on long-term snow events. I know we had a few concerns about some areas not getting hit as quick as maybe what we would hoped, but when you have a snow event that pushes, you know, into basically 2 different shifts, with another one tomorrow morning, it tends to be a challenge. So
Well,
anyway.
the teamwork was just amazing. So anyway, just really great. So it was so if you see any of those guys, give them a shout out. So that's all I have.
City Administrator's report?
The only item that I would ask for is that it was requested earlier for the shelter. We do have the funds available if we would like to go ahead and do a contribution. Based upon what I talked with Mark and Chief, a $1,000 donation would probably be welcome to those efforts if you as a council would like to go ahead and entertain that.
I make a motion, we do that, or?
What are we doing now?
$1,000 towards a donation for the homeless shelter, for them to go ahead and have funds available for this year to continue out, because they're in a fundraising event right now.
And we're taking this out of where? Your
Ward
pay?
1 salaries.
Get paid?
On cue.
And people will die before.
I thought about that. You're going to ask me.
Oh,
So
Make a
Joe-
motion, or we do
you
that.
took 100 from everybody, that's only 800.
All Ward 1.
We're gonna have to have a bakery,
There you
a
go.
little bake sale.
Little bake sale.
I'll second it, Joe.
Okay, so we have a motion by Joe, seconded by Wessels to contribute $1,000 to the homeless task force.
Thank you.
So, okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I guess we got a free room.
By your vote, you approve the
You gotta be
donation.
vetted by,
You'll never be vetted.
You Mark can share a room.
Council comments?
Are there any comments this evening?
How are we on the road coming out of the dump?
What?
Yeah, good. Yeah, we added, immediately after that, we added, what was it, almost 200 feet of 4-inch clean as a way to, not necessarily cattle grate, but it acts the same way, just put a rougher way out to knock some of those, that mud and debris off.
Also a cleaner way out though, too.
Yeah, oh yeah,
The
yeah.
rock
for
went
sure.
on top of mud, so it was actually cleaner too.
For sure. And the thing is it seems obvious, right? Add more rock when you're in the landfill. The problem with that is, as soon as it thaws, guess where the rock goes? To the bottom of the landfill. So you're constantly fighting that. So we're using that as a first step effort to try to, alleviate some of that. Those guys will be able to turn that rock over. It's not like a waste or anything, but if you've been in there with a pickup truck, good luck getting in there with a minivan, I'll tell you that. But the goal there is to knock all the mud and debris off. Is that going to solve the world's problems? No, it does not. Does it help quite a bit? Yes, it does. And then we also have increased sweeping and stuff like that. So it's frozen now. We don't have a problem. Next week, we'll have some issues that we work our way through. But again, it's...
Having that cell closest to the road though, too, is a bigger
Well-
problem.
Well, the problem that you got is that we're in the back of the last cell, so you got to drive across the entire landfill to get to where the dump station is, or where we're working at the open face, and then drive back out. So it's a challenge, and we're doing better.
Is there something we could do for, like we could put a couple larger, like roll-off dumpsters up front for where somebody has a couple odds and ends, someone will have to drive all the way back there. for
Already working on
trash
it.
bags or
We're already
something.
working on it. So Tony was talking last week. There's a landfill operations meeting every week. We're going to look at See if Waste Connections could help us out with that a little bit. When they come in and dump, we could dump for us. But we're actually going to look at maybe welding something up with a skid steer attachment on a 2-yard dumpster. That way somebody can just drive in, throw their stuff off in that. We can unload it with a skid steer or something like that. So,
Then you're driving all
yes, that
Do
is.
we have one of the old sweepers yet?
No, we do not.
We have
Now, the
a
old sweeper,
Tool cat with a broom on it.
we do not. We looked into getting a Kubota. It was an $8,000 deal. Not that that's a deal breaker at the landfill per se, but the latest was it didn't work quite as well as what we wanted it to, is what could the Kubota deal was, because we just did get a Kubota out there. So, which is essentially a tool cat, just not quite like that. So that is true. The new sweeper is more of a vacuum style that, does a better job essentially on the curb and gutters rather than a bristle broom style that goes this direction. That does play into the difference of the two, and that was one of the equipment purchases that changed in that 2-year, something's changed in 2 years, right? That's what the gentleman said. That was one of the things we identified. So what do? Do you get a skid steer mounted broom? Potentially. Does it take a skid steer out of the fleet when we need it? Yes, it does. Can we handle that on muddy days? Maybe. So those are all things we're identifying. The rock was the first step. I'm pretty, that will help to some level. Again, does it solve all the world's problems? It does not.
Right.
But and it's true. If you drive Bluff Road, I've been driving home almost every night coming in, and the mud on Bluff Road is not unique to the landfill operation. I'm not saying that we don't have issues and can do better, but that is an ag road that combination of all things around.
Bless you.
So.
Thank you.
Why is it so cold in here?
Why it's so cold? I don't know.
In
Why is
here?
it so cold in here? You want to give an update?
And why we're using heaters?
Chief, don't call it thermostat anymore.
That's right.
That's
We're trying to be green.
We made sure we took that away from them a long time.
It's job security.
We found, so 2 years ago, when I first started, one of the first big projects I had was the completion of the energy efficiency project here, and that I started in the beginning of January, and I think we were finished by mid-January, mid to late January. We had, this past Friday, we had Gerald out, who we've been working with at the library, and they were involved with that energy efficiency project and did a lot of the install and work here. They found, when I called them and told them the temperature of this room, they started looking at various things. The first thing they looked at was the units, and I'm not sure how this happened, but they found, I think would be this unit here. There's 3 of them out in the hallway that control this room. But this first one, there are 5 kilowatt units, and the first one was only a 3 kilowatt unit, so it got installed incorrectly. The wrong one got installed incorrectly. So we're getting a new unit at no cost to us, so that'll help some. The other thing that they concentrated on when they were here Friday, they had a temperature reader, like an infrared reader, and excuse me. What we found out is there's lots of cold air coming in through all the lights in the ceiling, all the speaker holes in the ceiling. That eave that runs all the way around that's, I believe, is vented to the outside, so we have cold air, 7-degree air coming into the council chambers. For this meeting, we plugged up some of those vents to try to keep the heat in. And so we're going to have to spend some money on insulating this place, insulating some of the vents, or the ductwork, I should say, and then insulating around these lights and things like that. So I got an email today of kind of their findings, a real simple email of what they found, and so now I'm going to have to figure out how we can insulate this place a little better and keep the heat in.
It's cold in here because it's cold outside.
Yes. Well, that's the other thing. I mean, we are going through.
When it's 0 outside, everything is cold. That's
Yeah, this is pretty abnormal weather for February. I think the usual high is like low to mid 40s, and we were at like 3 yesterday.
I just wanted to ask questions because people always ask me that.
Why is it cold in church, Joe?
Yeah. Trying to be green.
Why is it cold?
Anything
Knew
else?
that was coming.
Any other questions?
No, that's okay.
Thank you, Wayne.
Why is
Thank
it
you.
cold in June?
Anyone else have?
Thanks to the street department for a great job.
Agreed.
Good.
City Attorney's Report, public vote on whether or not to hold a closed meeting to discuss personnel, legal, and real estate matters pursuant to Section 610.021 RSMO 2000. Scornia?
Yes.
I don't think so, Susan. Solentrop?
Yes.
Patrick?
Yes.
Bennett?
Yes.
Obermark?
Yes.
Holtmeyer?
Aye.
Wessels?
Aye.
Okay.
I don't think you can do that, I'm just saying. Just saying, I don't know.
I'm about to put my hat on.
I don't think you can do that, but it's whatever, I mean,
Hey,
I
Mark.
thought you said my name.
Guy back there?
super funny.
Oh, that's Dwayne Reed?